When the spirit disconnects and the shadow of darkness runs unfiltered and unchecked, this is often when we can find people who become hardened criminals. In recent history, two of the most disturbing crimes occurred in 2022. One was involving a teenager in May of 2022 that walked into an elementary school and unalived, brutally murdered 21 elementary school students. That following November, a criminology student walked into a house and viciously murdered 4 university students in Idaho. My name is Kamala Hurley. I'm an evidential medium, and I will confess to you that I have never made a video quite like this before. And so I'm going to be imperfect, but I promise you I'm going to move in integrity. I have taken the time to channel the past lives of both Bryan Kohberger and Salvador Ramos, because as I was watching the victim impact statements made in court to Bryan Kohberger by the families of those university students that were brutally murdered, I started to see this image flash to me of the gunman, Salvador Ramos, who walked into that elementary school in Texas. And it was really interesting to me because I'm like, well, why is that jumping into my mind as I'm listening to the victim statements that are being said to Bryan Kohberger? And I couldn't make the connection. So I went online as I was watching and discovered that both of these crimes happened in 2022. So this video, I am going to be talking about their past lives. We're going to be talking about the energy of 2022 and what it means for us in 2025. So I guess the first thing that I should start to do is just talk about the energetics of Bryan Kohberger, because he's the reason why I decided to make this video. And I specifically feel ever since I was involved in this case, where I will just share that I have done readings for family members connected to the case, but I will not be doing mediumship with any of the victims connected to the Idaho 4 case. I'm actually going to be focused on Bryan Kohberger for this video. And one of the aspects of energy that we can all agree on is that he is cold, he's sharp, he's calculated. He seems to be completely emotionally disconnected from all of the victim statements that he's had to hear, as well as from the proceedings themselves. In fact, if you look at him and his energy, which I'm going to just put some pictures over here so that you can see, he's actually like very mental in terms of his energy. So I actually see crown chakra disconnect. I won't get too esoteric for people who don't understand the chakra system, but I just want to say that the crown and the third eye are overstimulated. I also want to say that his heart chakra feels locked. So this is for people who appreciate the chakra system. Essentially, what I want you to understand is that he has really no pleasure in life except for seeking ways to control it. But we're going to get into what that is about and how that's connected to his past life. I also want to say that his shadow of darkness, or the shadow expression, is really the desire to want to be notorious, famous. He wants to be superior at the cost of others. And he also has unchecked masculine wounds and deep identity fractures. Again, I'm not a doctor. Sometimes you will hear me talk in ways that we can all understand. And we can also understand just smugness in the photo. You can see within his energy that he's almost just smug. He's got a smirk. And you can see that he's attempted to create a mask, but it's still there. I'm sure you can see it. Really, this is a performance of his power to really conceal his emptiness. And I think that there are a lot of aspects here that I want to get into. I'm just trying to decide if I want to go into talking about Bryan Kohberger's life. Let me talk to you a little bit about the energetics of Salvador Ramos. So It's very interesting. With Salvador Ramos, I see that severe neglect was the first thing that started to come up for me. He was a loner, just like Bryan Kohberger was. Salvador had a speech impediment. He always was dressed poorly because of his socioeconomic background. And I saw in some of the aspects that I researched that he was also bullied by other individuals. I also, as I stepped into understanding his energy through a past life reading, I also learned from him, because I connected to him in mediumship, that he had a very volatile home life and that there was a severe wound with his mother as well as his father. So he felt, as was explained to me, he felt very estranged from both of his parents and actually from most everybody in his life. I also see that he stopped attending school regularly. I think that he only did some of ninth grade, and then eventually he just completely dropped out. He suffered from severe emotional isolation. And so, from an energetic standpoint, I see that his root chakra and his heart chakra were very fractured. These deep fractured really connected to his sense of a lack of safety, his sense of belonging, a sense of home, and a sense of unconditional love, which are fundamentals for any soul to stabilize in a human experience. His unprocessed emotions and rage turned inward and eventually exploded outward. So he was known to exhibit aggression as he got older, such as violence towards animals and also exhibiting aggression to other people. He was also known to be watching violent content online and would share this content to other people. He truly had a disconnect from a male guidance in his life who could embody healthy strength and compassion. So I see a lot of that wounded masculine archetype as well that collapsed into his shadow. He had no guidance, no grounding, just pain, and eventually a desire to really externalize that pain violently. Now, I did mediumship with him back in 2022, and I did it live on TikTok. And although I don't have a record of it, I do have a memory of connecting to his spirit. And one of the things that he shared with me is that his soul could have avoided harming all of these people if there had been adequate mental health programs in place. So we're going to talk about that towards the end. I actually just wanted to say here that from the afterlife, Salvador Ramos was really showing me that he was integrating lessons that he had learned from this life. And so I know this might trigger some people for me to sound so compassionate to these two individuals, but I want to say that humanity needs to learn what went wrong so we can put in place things for others to succeed. So there will be advocacy for me that medical medical professionals research the behavior and that they can understand as much as possible about these two individuals, because I think they also speak of a new archetype of wounding that is emerging with deep isolation, online access to dark content, as well as feeling disconnected from humanity, which leads to violence taking place. Okay, so with that, I took some notes here. I am wanting to just open up where I channeled all of my notes here. I'll just kind of quickly show you that this is how I do it. So it's very interesting to me. As I started to step into Bryan Kohberger's past life, the first thing that started to come through was that he's extremely downtrodden, hopelessness, that he was disconnected for years from other people. And that I was brought into an understanding that part of this darkness was born into his soul contract. Now, I've never seen this before when I have done past life readings as well as Akashic readings for individuals. So please understand that this is new. I'm going to share it with you. Love to know what you think by hopefully getting into the comments and letting me know what you have to say about this. So part of what he told me is that and when I say Bryan Kohberger, I have connected to his higher self. And what I was shown is that part of his soul contract was part of a caste or path that, or like dharma or life purpose that he's on in this life. And what I see is that there are hierarchies of souls on earth. Now, I've always known that people have a soul path. You can think of somebody who's dealing with addiction, that's a certain soul path. Whereas, let's say somebody who's becoming the president of the United States, that's a different level of soul path. And every soul that I see reincarnates until eventually all of the necessary lessons of earth are understood. And what often happens is that soul moves into the afterlife. Now, I am not here to tell you that you have to believe in reincarnation, because we're just having a conversation. So if it resonates for you, take it, or this is just going to be a very esoteric conversation for you. Either way, I just allow yourself to be the guide on what matters to you. So what I was shown, because I believe in this reincarnation and because I see past lives as a past life reader and also as a hypnotherapist, I was shown in this session that there is a hierarchy of souls on earth. It is beyond socioeconomic status that we understand in life. So again, think of somebody that is like born into a life that is very abundant, luxurious, rich. That is a certain soul path. Whereas it's a certain soul path for somebody to experience poverty. So what I see is that the soul has imprints that are meant to be accomplished while in a soul chart or soul contract or soul blueprint, or if you're into astrology, it would be called your natal chart. Each soul has a manifest, and that was the word that I was shown, is that a manifest is given to every single soul that is born in order to attempt to accomplish the caste path that a soul is on. Very specifically, there are a list of aspects, or what we can call soul tools, that are brought to earth to help accomplish that life. Now, some of the energetic tools that are given to a soul are earned from previous incarnations, while some spiritual gifts are actually gifted in an attempt to accomplish the life. So what I see is that both Bryan and Salvador were common souls that thought that they could overcome the aspects of biology, environment, and family and community when they committed to this life. They bravely went into this life believing that they would have the capacity to redeem mistakes that they had made in previous lives. Now, this is where I'm going to start to talk about Bryan exclusively. Bryan was placed on earth in his position as punishment to begin with. So he understood he was coming into this caste path that was going to be about punishment. And it was his sole intention to overcome the punishment in hopes of liberating himself from this punishment. Okay. So let me just keep going. I'm not laughing at like what I'm saying. I'm just trying to make sure that it makes sense to you. What I am shown is that he had harmed in a past life at such a high level of violence that he has been sentenced to reincarnate in life that is equal to the harm that he created. His parents in this life were hosts for his arrival on Earth. Bryan gained certain aspects from his parents to help him overcome his punishment life. So he had a choice. There were choices that he could make. But because he was unable to overcome that, he succumbed to drug usage in his, when he was 16, in order to suppress the emotions that, and his cast path. He wanted to avoid what he was obligated to do in his life. He chose a substance, heroin, to avoid the soul work that he was meant to work on. So I see that we are not to blame the parents and punish them as much as we are to simply hold Bryan accountable for his actions. Now, this is where it gets very interesting too, because this came through sort of separate, that in 2033, that a book would be published detailing more of the psychological understanding of Bryan Kohberger and his impact, the impact that his childhood had on his adult life. So we'll see. Come back to this video in 2033, save it, whatever, like it, and you can come back and check me then. Maybe it'll happen sooner, but I hear 2033 because it's going to take time for psychologists and even for doctors to understand Bryan Kohberger. And what I am is that energetic piece talking about the soul. Now, this is where it gets really wild in this reading. I actually see that Bryan was a homegrown terror. That's what it came through. And in fact, I was given a cast path number. I was told that he's a Terra 5, and I'm not certain what that means, but this is related to his soul contract for this life. The reason why he is punished in this life and why he was supposed to seek redemption and not harm against others was because of the depth of harm that he had imposed on others. And this is what came through. In his last past life that this is connected to, he was a doctor. He was a clinical scientist that actually researched the most unethical approaches through a military group that was connected to World War II in Japan. Put it simply, he was a scientist and a doctor that was part of the infamous Unit 731. Now, I'm not going to get into that because that gets actually really dark, but I will tell you that this was a Japanese group of scientists that performed animalistic experiments on humans. And inside that unethical and suffering of thousands of souls, he has been sentenced to being punished by the families of all of those hurt by his actions. And that he has 1,000 lives that he has to redeem for the actions of that one life. That is new to me. I've never seen that before when I've done Akashic record reading. I've certainly never seen that when past lives have come up. But I also see that he will live in this current life in prison until his death, and that his soul now is being forced back into accountability and understanding remorse against those that he harmed in this life and understanding the broader context of humanity. That's super heavy. I know, at least for me it is. I mean, I honestly, this got so dark. I was like, how do I even start to share this with people? But I I guess in sharing this, we'll have a conversation in the comments where we can understand this more, because I know that a lot of light workers and intuitive people follow me. Now, moving into Salvador Ramos's past life, the first thing that I wrote down is that he has a lack of love and empathy for himself. And that really began when his mother rejected him. And that's really interesting because technically his father rejected him first. I looked that up. But what he told me in mediumship was that he actually could have been rehabilitated if he had been on the radar of the educational system as well as social workers, and that new programs need to be developed in order to catch other souls like him. He needed true support. He wasn't able to get it from the community or from his immediate family. This is the true cost of poverty. And at this time, when I was actually looking and connected to his soul, the grief that I felt was so intense, it literally made me weep. So he's went on to explain to me that he was brought into this life because it was part of a soul slip. And I'm like, what is a soul slip? And so he said that he was a product where when he was a young child, right up until 4th grade, that he would participate in school. He loved his mother, his grandmother. He got along with school children, but in around the age of grade 4 is when other children started to notice his shabby clothes, his poor appearance, his speech impediment, and that he started being bullied. And that led to this energy of hopelessness. And that caused him to lose faith in himself and the value of his life. He told me that he suffered from like extreme self-esteem and self-confidence issues, and that he slowly started in on a soul slip. And he says that's when an individual moves and slips into a downward spiral, which also led to him being exposed to energetic attacks by harmful entities. Now, I don't get into the world of entities that much. I am aware of them, but I often feel like I don't want to pay attention to it. But I'm going to share something with you because I asked at this point, what are harmful entities, so that I have a clear understanding. He explained to me that it is disembodied debris collected from dimensional overlaps. It also can occur from astral planes, where the nightmare of dreams and fears can imprint into an energy that can attract to souls on earth who are going through that downward spiral. So just to put it into common language, people whose vibration drops are more what did I say? When people's vibrations are dropped, they are more susceptible to lower vibrational entities and imprints that can trigger greater levels of depression, hopelessness, and fear. So it's kind of like, I think that this is how I think of it. Like if people drink too much and the next day they wake up feeling depressed, and how that can lead to depression as somebody turns to that substance to try to escape. That to me is sort of an aspect of a soul slip. So substances, addiction, ruminating thoughts, not actually taking action to heal depression, not understanding the triggers of anxiety. These are lower vibrational states that need to immediately find holistic wellness approaches to shift energy. I am shown that a lot of modern approaches to healing can sometimes not provide the outcomes that people hope for. So for examples, SSRIs are tended to be a process that an individual goes through where medications are adjusted in order to find the right chemistry for a single individual. But then what Salvador showed me is that if you don't have access to that type of wellness or healthcare, that it won't matter anyhow. He told me that there are natural ways to shift out of that spiral of energy, which I will be sharing with you. So then the next thing that came through, I asked him about his past life. Like, what was your past life? How did you end up with this soul contract? And he said his past life, and this one's wild too, was that he witnessed the death of Christ. He was a spectator that was part of the Roman crowds that cheered for the harm of another. And that's the first time I've ever brought that through for anybody as well. So, so then I specifically wanted to ask, does source punish? And what was brought forward was that no, it doesn't punish, it educates. It's not about punishment, it's about education. So the karma that's created in a life, if it's not cleared or healed, then that means there is dharma in the next life, a purpose to the next life in order to heal that aspect. So that was like about all I could take for bringing both of their energies through, because like it was super intense for me, and there's just only so much that I was able to do. But I've been really focused on wanting to understand, like, how can we understand the energy of 2022? And so let's talk about, like, energetically what 2022 was all about. And I have my notes here to help us understand. So back in 2022, the numerology of 2022, it was a year about exposing what was out of alignment. It was about understanding that it was a shadow year, about exposing, sorry if I'm repeating, in a shadow year, the 6 represents what is out of alignment, especially around the themes of home, children, inner child wounds, and relationships. So understand that both of these crimes involved the sacred, which was the home and young people. Both of these targets were innocence. Both were spiritually invasive acts. And part of this is connected to a need for humanity to wake up to understanding the wounds of the inner child wounds of individuals as well as of nations, and how it connects to the family dynamic, relationships, children, and that when it is left unchecked, particularly because 2022 was about exposing suppressed shadows, about understanding the collective trauma. It was also about understanding masculine wounding. So there were multiple crises that happened that year. A lot of mass violence, a lot of political uprisings, a lot of mental health collapse. And I'm not an astrologer, but I thought I would include this for people that might be interested, that in 2022, Chiron, representing the wounded masculine, was in Aries. Pluto was in Capricorn, which is really about the death of old systems. And the North Node was in Taurus. And the South Node was in Scorpio, which is about the polarity of safety versus trauma, pleasure versus control. So these placements really shook a core foundation of emotional repression, unresolved rage, and systemic neglect, especially focused in men. So in order to understand that, I wanted to understand, like, the energetics of 2022 versus 2025. And what I will tell you is that Chiron is still in Aries. So that masculine, the wounded masculine energy is still bleeding out. And there's no real container to hold it. The South Node is in Scorpio, which is still connected to, and sorry, this is for 2022. So just recapping, that the South Node in Scorpio was really about repressed trauma, death, and psychological implosion. and that the soul themes for 2022, it was about identity collapse. If you can remember what was happening to you in 2022, it was about identity collapse, about a desperate search for control, feeling disconnected from source as well as from the body, which is how we could see some of the themes of politics as well as like health care being enacted at that time. I also want to say that the shadow was deeply rising in 2022 because it had the absence of support, initiation, and healing. So that's when, Salvador and Bryan became these vessels that really represented in some aspect collective unrepressed rage and manifestations of what can happen to individuals like Salvador and Ramos when emotional neglect meets a spiritual void. In 2025, the year of this is a year of like energetic integration and spiritual responsibility. Chiron is actually still in Aries, but with awareness. In this year, we're being asked to heal the wound and not just expose it. So we can see that 2025 is very different than 2022. Pluto moves into Aquarius long term, which is the initiation into greater collective healing. This is where so many spiritual awakenings are happening and new templates and codes are being brought forth in people. The North Node is in Aries and the South Node is in Libra. And this is a call to radical authenticity, sacred boundaries, and stepping into the energy of being a warrior spirit. This is really an important year for releasing people-pleasing aspects, toxic tendencies, and inaction, procrastination. The themes for 2025 are all about rebuilding identity inward to an expression of the soul outward. It is about conscious action instead of blind rage, and it is embodiment over disassociation, which often happened to Salvador and Bryan. They would disassociate. This is also a year for collective nervous system repair. So this is an integration point. I know that it has felt like a wild card, but it is a chance to embody what we refused to see in 2022. So let me break it down that this is a time for us to be more awake, more sensitive. And if we can understand that we are not bringing notoriety to these two criminals that took vicious, horrific action against the innocent, but as this being part of a breakthrough in building systems that can prevent harm to future lives, then I am going to advocate for it. We really need to understand collectively and individually how to balance our sacred masculine and feminine energy, how to alchemize trauma into purpose and wisdom that helps others, as well as creating soul-rooted identity and rituals in things that matter. So no more people-pleasing. It's about being true to who you are and what you believe in and what your soul is called to do. This year is really about, and this is your role, is about teaching people how to reconnect to the body and intuition. So I'm just going to finish this up because I know this has been a little bit intense. And again, I'm sorry if I seem a little bit robotic with this message. This is my first time doing anything like this. So talk about radical authenticity. I'm just doing it. I face the fear and I do it, which is what I advocate for you, bringing greater balance into your life. Now, how could these crimes have been prevented if support was there? One, the very first aspect, and this is for my medical professionals that are listening, is that early intervention through trauma-informed mental health could have been a game changer. What that means is that there needs to be, in our educational systems, or perhaps like through medical professionals that work with the educational systems. I'm not certain exactly what it looks like, but what's needed for individuals that are in crises like Bryan Kohberger and Salvador Ramos is that someone needs to recognize emotional dysregulation early on, not just behavior problems or isolation. So the impact of a trauma-informed therapist or coach at places of education could have been a factor to transform what happened. A trauma-informed therapist or coach could offer ways to help early children, how to impact children express how to feel shame, how to process rage in safe ways, and how to build emotional language to express themselves. Because the violence didn't come out of just nowhere. It came from part of years of silent inner chaos with no one to witness. And in regards to the past lives, as well as the soul contracts that they had for Bryan and for Salvador, I want you to understand that this approach would also be able to help them stay in alignment with what their soul purpose was and not move into the soul slip that led to the degradation, to the demise, that led to the demise of their choices in life. The second aspect that I advocate for is male emotional literacy and sacred masculine mentorship. So I see that with Salvador and Bryan, that there was like, they really were in need of masculine energy that was grounded and heart-centered to be present. Now, I know that that's not always available with the dynamics of an immediate family, but a mentor, a coach, a father figure, or perhaps a program that was available at the elementary school years could find a way to model healthy emotional strength without the need to be overly dominant. I also believe that rites of passage for healthy identity and purpose would be important as well. Figuring out what that might be is part of the collective work. I don't have anything more than that. I also want to say that advocating circles or safe spaces where children can go, that they can cry and share and be seen without judgment, would also be an important aspect for the masculine energy of these children. So they don't need more control or more rules. They actually need to feel seen without having to hurt someone to get there. The third aspect that I'm going to share is spiritual connection or energetic regulation. Obviously, not everyone might feel spiritual, but I do believe that we all understand that energy is everything. And what Bryan and Salvador were missing was any relationship to an aspect of source or what's sacred. I believe that nature is a beautiful way to help, and not only spending more time in natural settings where the forest can help repair the nervous system. There could also be perhaps sessions where breath work is available for children, yoga, in order to help regulate rage and anxiety. Another aspect is meditation with children, or even energy work like Reiki to reconnect body with soul. These are harmless ways that have no side effects and that would just promote mindfulness. And they're skills that children could carry with them for life. And the most fun aspect I would also advocate for is creative expression, like art, movement, music, to help release emotional buildup. So a lot of somatic healing, I think, should be involved. In fact, I got a little bit more that a disconnected soul really does become a breeding ground for shadow. So having a energy hygiene could be a path to violence prevention. A fourth step, okay, a fourth step is school-based emotional support and peer integration. I believe that in 2022, any system that noticed a disconnection before it turned into a pathology, that was absent. So have what could have helped back in 2022 or even in 2025 today is having peer support groups for individuals that are bullied or for individuals that are isolated or feeling lonely. I also believe that for the collective at general, having restorative justice circles would be really important, and socioeconomic learning as part of a daily education, because we understand that different economic levels and different social backgrounds um, are diverse. So if someone had just sat next to Bryan or Salvador and helped them in their loneliness and said, I see you, it might have been an opportunity to change everything. Another aspect is community and family healing systems. So, what was broken in 2025, and we can see aspects still working to heal in 2025, is the environment where emotionally unstable and deeply fragmented events occurred. That is perhaps more obvious with Salvador, but what might be able to help our communities is family therapy that is available at um, at different socioeconomic levels. I don't know structurally how that might look, but addiction recovery for loved ones could have led to increased family connectedness and a sense of family purpose. And that, again, to me seems more like connected to Salvador. I also want to say that I understand that not every family member would want to participate in that. So, having safe places, safe homes, or guardianships that can prioritize safety for children would be imperative. Community mentors or programs for high risk youth, I would continue to advocate. So understand, I see that a lot of younger generations will be stepping into the role of working to create community programs as well as mentorships, because healing just one soul can truly disrupt a generational cycle. Healing a family could be a path to preventing other tragedies. So now that I've mentioned like mentorship programs, after school programs or clubs, healing centered schools or educators, and teaching somatic safety and nervous system tools to help regulate, such as breath work, visualization, meditation, EFT tapping, grounding exercise, forest therapy, or even just nature therapy, depending on what environment you're in, as well as bringing into our educational systems like daily body check-ins, journals where students can express their emotions and ask questions like, why do I feel this and what does it need? Could be pathways to changing violence in our communities. I also just want to advocate sound healing, more time to play music, and the ability to move with emotional safety. Because even when maybe no one was there to comfort people like Bryan or Salvador, we can learn techniques to comfort ourselves without internalizing the pain. And the final aspect that I just want to bring forth is that I know people like myself, as well as perhaps you, are still learning how to heal and how to connect to your intuition and how to understand your soul identity and to work through shadow work and inner child healing. And it really does take a step at a time. So the final way that I just want to finish up saying or finish this message to the collective is that the trauma and the horror can perhaps be the biggest approach to energetic alchemy, where our collective pain, our individual pain can become purpose. So the more that we anchor into love and light, the more that we can understand our self-worth without attachment to economics, without attachment to even certain dynamics of status, gives us empowerment. And I know that this is really not a finished conversation. And I know that I shared like a lot of information here, but I really believe, based on the mediumship with Salvador Ramos and connecting to um, the the Akashic records, connected to Bryan Kohberger and Salvador Ramos, I am not here to um, bring fame, but I'm here to advocate awareness that these violent incidents and incidents like these that occurred can actually lead us to building a healthier understanding, not just of ourselves, but to building healthier families and communities. So thanks for taking the time to watch. I really would love if you could subscribe to my channel, but more importantly, if you would let me know what some of your thoughts are on this. I know it's a little bit long. I appreciate you for listening. And if you guys want to give me feedback, let me know what you think should be added to the list that I shared with you. Then please put that into the comments. I'm also going to take everything that I have here and I'm going to drop it on Substack. So you can also have an easy way to just sort of access and outline to everything that I shared with you. With light and love, I just want to say people like you matter. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you for being the light healer, the worker that you are. And may this collective find deeper ways to heal and bring peace to all.